Hello, I'm Mike Wheeler, and today we're going to talk about material handling. This is week 6 of our safety leadership class. Um, so, our objectives for today, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain safety procedures and precautions related to material handling, describe how to safely lift and carry heavy objects, explain the hazards of working around forklifts, describe the hazards related to lifting devices, cranes, hoists, slings, and chains. Um, Explain how to safely store various materials, and explain the hazards of transporting gas cylinders in the shop. So, material handling. Material handling is the cause of a great many injuries, even fatalities in the workplace. Understanding the hazards will reduce our risk of injury. Um, Material handling is part of nearly every job we do, so you need to know how to do that safely. How materials are moved, lifted, carried, and stored impacts your safety and the safety of those around you. Material handling is the leading cause of workplace injury. If I look back at my career, of all the people I've seen miss time for work, by far the majority was material handling stuff, and the majority of those were back injuries. People lifting improperly, lifting too much weight, making poor decisions, stuff like that. Most people who are injured doing material handling are the causes of their own accidents. This is what I just said. They lift things they shouldn't, they use poor lifting technique, or they don't carry things securely. Um, Former supervisor of mine broke every bone on the top of his foot when a piece of plate, a piece of 10 gauge, slid off a rack and landed right on the top of his boot. And he missed quite a bit of time from that. So, one of the key thing for any time we're moving stuff in the shop is every material movement should have a plan. You need to know how you're going to lift it. You need to know how you're going to put it down. Where are you going to go? Where are you going to put it? How are you going to put it down? And then does anybody else need to be involved? You need help. You need to communicate with people that you're walking through the area with something. So a plan is crucial to safe material handling. So cause of injuries, heavy lifting, back injuries make up nearly 80% of the injuries related to material handling. Pinch points, finger or body injuries from pinch points. We think of pinch points a lot of times as fingers, but the reality is it's usually, not usually, sometimes it's much more traumatic than that. I'll talk about that when we get to forklift operation, but your entire body can be crushed in a pinch point if you're in the wrong spot. Falling materials, a foot injury from dropped or falling items, that's the real common cause. That's why you see safety toes required in a lot of shops, and they will again protect your toes. They won't protect your metatarsals. Improper chemical storage. Usually it's fires from improper storage of flammables, and then machinery, cranes and forklifts. People get hurt with them all the time. Lifting and carrying. So welders are really workplace athletes. When you think about what you do on a day-to-day basis, you're climbing, you're crouching, you're moving heavy stuff, you're swinging hammers, you do all this kind of stuff. So you need to kind of treat yourself as an athlete. You need to stay fit, and you need to understand proper body mechanics of what you're doing to avoid injury. Improper lifting technique is the leading cause of back injuries in industry. So to lift safely, your spine is much stronger when it's fairly straight. So you need to keep your back straight and try to get as vertical as possible when you're lifting. Often the problem is not being able to get the weight close enough to your body to lift it with your legs, so you end up lifting it with your back, and that's what causes the injury. And also, don't twist and lift. Try to get the object directly in front of you and as close to your body as possible. It's going to sound like I'm saying a broken record, but that's really how you move heavy weight. Make sure you've got a secure grip. If you're halfway up and it falls out of your hand, lands on your foot, that could be a bad deal. Get help if an object cannot be safely lifted alone. Even 20 pounds can be dangerous to lift if you can't get the weight close to your body and right in front of you. If you've got to, as you noted before, if you've got to twist the side, pick something up, move it, 20 pounds can damage you. And something fairly light but bulky and awkward, get somebody to help you. And then if you are going to have somebody help you, communicate. So, hey, we're picking it up. We're going to put it over here. I'm going to set this down. My grip's slipping. I need to stop and reset. Communication's key. Make sure I've learned this lesson the hard way. Make sure you have somewhere safe to put the object down before you pick it up. Nothing's worse than you and your buddy picking up something heavy, carrying it across the shop, and the table you were going to put it on already has stuff on it. So make sure you got the landing zone picked and prepped before you pick the thing up. And make sure the pathway to that drop zone is clear of any trip hazards. You know, you don't want to be walking backwards carrying something heavy and have somebody string an electrical cord behind you. Work around forklifts. So forklifts are really essential tools in many shops. They're also involved in many injuries and fatalities each year. Common cause of accidents, putting yourself in a dangerous position. So forklifts can create pinch points and crush you against stationary objects. That's really one of the biggest dangers with them. And if you haven't worked around forklifts, don't understand them, like our little forklift in the shop, it doesn't look like it weighs that much. And the reality is it weighs much more than the average car. It's got to have that mass so that it can counterbalance the heavy weights it lifts. So there, you know, if you're next to something solid and that forklift bumps you, you're not going to stop it. It's going to crush you. Just down the road here at a local warehouse, probably 3 or 4 years ago, a forklift operator was killed. He was moving stuff around the warehouse, had to jump off his forklift to grab something, and didn't put the brake on his forklift, walked around behind it, and it rolled backwards and crushed him against a rack they were storing material on. It crushed his chest, and he died. Terrible situation. You need to be very aware of where you are in relation to the forklift's path and turning circle. Okay? Another real common cause of accidents or incidents is standing too close to the forklift. Lots of people, believe it or not, get their feet run over. They'll be talking to the forklift operator. They're standing really close to the lift to talk to them, and then when the guy pulls away, it runs right over their feet. And 6,000-pound forklift on solid rubber tires, it's gonna be a bad day for your feet. And also, when you're working on forklift, it's really important that you make your presence known to the lift driver. You need to make sure the lift driver knows you're there so you don't get run over. And how we do that is we always make eye contact with the driver to ensure that he's aware of your location and realizes there's another person in the area. Working with cranes, we don't have anywhere near enough time to make you proficient overhead crane operators in our program. Certainly not in this lesson. So we're just going to cover kind of the risks associated with them. Common causes of careless operation: treat every lift like it's a matter of life and death, because it might be, and do not multitask. You need to be focused on the lift. The person running the crane needs to be running the crane. The person running the tag line needs to be running the tag line. The person clearing the way needs to be clearing the way, not doing anything else. Improper rigging is another big one. You must inspect the rigging before you use it. You wouldn't think chains would get injured or damaged, and they do. We've come in and found, in industry, I've come in and found chains, a 4-way chain, so a chain with 4 legs. During the night, somebody had lifted something way too heavy, and one of the legs of that 4-way chain was an inch longer than all the others because of the stretch in it. So check your rigging before you use it. I've seen nylon straps get melted because they were too close to what somebody was welding. You got to look at that stuff, and then make sure it's rated for what you're lifting, and lift angles. So I'll put some information in this week's content folder about lift angles and stuff like that. But basically, as the angle that the straps or the chains get to gets steeper and steeper, their load capacity goes down and down and down. So even if your sling is rated for 4,000 pounds, at an extreme angle, it might only be rated for half of that, and you need to understand that. Another common cause of an incident is lack of communication or poor communication. When something's on an overhead crane, everybody in the area needs to know that you're making a lift so that they can stay out of the way. And the other thing is, only one person is in charge of that lift. So you don't need to be getting directions from 5 different people. One person runs the lift, and everybody goes off that person's lead. And then not paying attention. You got to be aware of your surroundings so you don't put yourself in a position where you can get hurt. Several times I've walked out on the shop floor and almost walked directly under suspended load because people were flying it across the shop and didn't warn anybody. So if you're not looking up, you're putting yourself in danger. Be aware of pinch points to have an escape route plan in case things go wrong. As you're moving through the shop with an overhead load, you should always have an exit strategy. Where am I going to go if something bad happens? And then never put yourself under a suspended load or close enough to the suspended load so that if it falls, it can injure you. So gravity pulls things straight down, but if whatever's dropping hits something on the way down, it can change direction and take you out. So just because you're not under it doesn't mean you're safe. Chemicals and flammable liquids, you've got to store them safely as the label tells you to. The SDS info must be available for each chemical on site. Every container must be labeled with their contents. Every squirt bottle on the shop floor, even if it's water, it's got to say water on it. Everything's got to be labeled. Flammables need to be stored in a sealed metal container to prevent vapor from escaping. And flammables need to be stored in a flammables cabinet when they're not in use. Put them back when you're done with them. So transporting gas cylinders, as a welder, this is something you're going to do quite a bit. And they're heavy. They're one of those things that we lift that's probably way over what we should. The good thing about them is we can get them really close to our body, so we're usually not hurting our backs too bad. But anytime you're transporting a gas cylinder, you've got to remove the regulator and put the safety cap on it before you unchain it from the welder. You should never have a bottle that is unsecured without a safety cap on it. If you're going to use a hand cart, and you should be using a hand cart to move these, don't roll them through the shop. Use a hand cart designed for gas cylinders. Just plain old hand carts, bottles will roll off of them because they're not designed for them if you're not being careful. And all those hand carts need to have chains on them to secure them to the hand cart. If you're going down an incline, let the bottle go in front of you so that it doesn't run you over if it builds up too much speed. And opposite, if you're going up an incline, lead the way with the bottle behind you so that you're not pushing up the hill and when it slips out of your hand it lands on you. And then secure the bottle at its final destination, whether you're taking it to the empties spot or to the welder. As soon as you get there, before the safety cap comes off, you've got to chain it up. And then a special thing about acetylene bottles is they're very, very different from all the other compressed gases we use. Acetylene is actually dissolved in liquid acetone. And so inside one of these acetylene bottles is liquid acetone and then a filler. It's almost like fire brick, like something. It's lightweight and it's very porous. And then what happens is if you lay that acetylene bottle over on its side, everything, the valve and everything is contaminated with acetone and all that kind of stuff. So they need to be stood up for a minimum of 4 hours before you can use them, or they will just pull acetone out of the bottles, the liquid acetone. So acetylene bottles are kind of weird. So wrap up. You'll encounter many kinds of material handling each day. You need to know the risks associated with them. I didn't say it in this lesson, I've said it in other lessons. One of the biggest things is wear the proper gloves. Lifting objects can result in injury if done improperly. Get help with heavy or awkward objects. Pinch points are a common cause of injury in many situations, from moving material by hand to forklift and crane operation. Cranes and forklifts can be dangerous to work with. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Flammables are going to be present in a welding shop. They need to be stored and handled properly. And then transporting gas cylinders can be very dangerous. So make sure you've been trained on the proper procedure. References. That's it. I will see you next time.